So there was no war. Well, there was no war on the 16th. Like the guys from PBS thought. Also one. The Nick Schifrin, that's the guy from PBS. There's also one CNN's chief international reporter, or anchor, I should say, also had some information that Biden had said it was going down on the 16th. And sans the attack on state banks and the MOD website, there was no attack on Ukraine. Today, though, last night, today in Ukraine time, there's reports of shelling and artillery fire, and apparently I read somewhere that there were 40 artillery shells shot from Ukraine into the Donbass region. But these kinds of attacks are pretty common between the independent regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and Ukraine. So this is just a resumption of the faux ceasefire that they had together under the Minsk agreements or whatever. I haven't really read the Minsk agreements. I don't really know what's in it. But what I do know is, facts on the ground, is that ceasefire violations happen all the time. There is a concern that Russia will use this. Russia is amplifying its talks about genocide in the Donbass region, and in general, they seem more hawkish on liberating Donbass. We'll see what happens. Markets are down. I'm talking to you guys from intraday. So last I checked, though, markets were down about 300 or something. So I don't know. I don't know if it's inflation or if it's Ukraine talk or whatever. Markets are strange. Maybe it's the high frequency trading. There's no deep obvious market dump though, so whatever. Apparently, I don't know for sure. I haven't dug into the financials or any of the numbers or whatever, but Palantir's growth, analysts think, is slowing down a little bit. So Palantir took a dump today as well, down to 12. In the morning it dumped all the way down to 12 flat, 12.05 or something like that. But it bounced back up to, only a moderate. Still, it's a dump, but a moderate dump. It's now at like 12.50 or 12.30 or something like that. So I don't think, at least for now, as of right now, Ukraine is relatively the same as it was prior to this week. Diplomatic talks have been deteriorating, but we'll pretty much have to see. I've seen some guys talking about how this is a major event, and I'm a little bit more cautious about these things. I don't think it's as bad as people think yet, anyway. Yeah, it's a pretty slow day today. I guess not so bad. I've gotten over the hangover of it not happening on the 16th. It's still out there, the possibility, but I think, unlike some analysts, I think the odds are going down a little bit of a full-scale invasion. It might be a minor incursion, as the words of our president. And so, I think it's gonna die down. Maybe in a little while, it'll flare up again. But as of right now, things seem stable. Which is, if you're somebody like me, yeah, it's not very interesting. Everything's calm. Well, relative to where I'm at, the rest of the world is pretty calm, but it's a little bit more jittery than it was before. We'll see. We're not going into full war production mode though. In Canada, they're getting a little unhinged. Trudeau is facing a smear campaign with this. He's really emphasizing the Nazi aspect of the truckers, and he told some Jewish Russian MP that she was siding with Nazis, which is not a good PR. But so we might see some regime change. We might see some regime change in Canada coming up soon. But midterms also coming up in the U.S. We might see some changes in the House and the Senate there. But we really find ourselves in a snafu. Situation normal, all fucked up. Which, it is what it is, right? Yep. It's a nice day though. It's getting hot where I'm at. Usually the sentiment in America is usually the inverse of whatever the sentiment in the rest of the world is. So if America is getting a little jittery, like some of my friends, that means I can calm down a little bit, right? I think Ray Dalio had something like that. If you're anxious, then you should calm down a little bit, and if you're calm, you should get a little bit more anxious. And that's pretty much how I feel right now. Markets are getting a little spooked, and so therefore I'm calming down a little bit, coming down to meet the equilibrium. And they're coming up to meet the equilibrium. But this is not just about Russia or Ukraine. This is, we're seeing like a shift in the global tension, right? Which is why, most of my portfolio is in Russia. It's in Palantir, because I was watching a video from Karp, Alex Karp, Palantir CEO, Mr. Alex Karp. You should give him respect, right? And he basically summed up what I think is generally correct. We're going to see a shift to a low trust environment, which is why Palantir Systems about making sure that analysts see only the data that they're supposed to see, and also logging every interaction that they have with the data is vital, because we're going to see, everyone in the world kind of knows in the Cold War, post-Cold War order, that there are spies and CIA agents, or the equivalent of CIA agents in every institution across the globe. But I think the balance rests with more spies being in the U.S. than U.S. spies being in Russia or in China. And I don't think that the Olympics is going to be the pivot point that some people expected or sort of thought in the beginning. Russia and China colluding to, China gets the PR for the Olympics, and then Russia goes in after to not disrespect or show, allow China to save face on the Olympics by invading in the middle of the Olympics. I don't think that's going to be the pivot point that we're looking for, but we'll see a moment of calm, which I suppose is a good thing. It's just sort of there's a tension between the calmness of peace. You want peace, but you want the peace to be something that can be maintained without too much direction, right? Which is something that I think that in this post-Cold War environment we've gotten terribly wrong. We think that because the USSR has disbanded, that means that we won the Cold War, and so therefore we don't really have to try that hard. But the peace that was created in the post-Cold War order, it was more of a pause to allow Russia to catch up, which we were sort of naive about, rather than I think that maintaining sort of a containment posture would have sort of amortized the peacekeeping to a better degree instead of having these flare-ups. But we in America, our foreign policy, we didn't feel like that was the right thing to do, which I think is the wrong strategy. But people like me, we're not in the top echelons. They're pouring millions of dollars into football stadiums, and what happens when war breaks out? Are there going to be players to be playing football games? Are there going to be people to watch football games? I think it's a gross misuse of capital. Ultimately, it is private enterprise, and the sponsors of SoFi Stadium can do as they please. But I think they're expecting a much more, in the words of Alex Karp, much more static world than is what's true to reality. The stasis being, we're just going to continue to grow this peacetime economy and not make preparations for war. We're not hedging correctly. There's too much capital going into bullish positions, not enough capital being put into bearish positions. I guess bull and bear don't really, but more dovish, hawkish positions. Because maybe we should have spent less time in the Middle East. And in retrospect, of course, hindsight is 20/20. We shouldn't have spent so much time in the Middle East and spent much more time domestically and in Europe. see, graphs of, oh, U.S. defense spending is, dwarfs the remaining top 15 or whatever combined, and I don't see a problem with that. I see a problem with where we're allocating it, but I don't see a problem with necessarily being the top spender in defense. It's really a question of concreteness, like concretely, where are we spending that money? Should we be spending it there rather than somewhere else? The only problem I have with our huge numbers of the large number of the amount of money we spend on defense isn't something we should let Europe rest its laurels on. What I see there is not an overspending by the U.S., but more of an underspending by European countries who have basically outsourced their defense capacities to the U.S. It was probably smart not to let Japan militarize in the wake of World War II, but we managed to contain war in Germany and in Italy effectively with just by imposing the economic global order on the rest of the world. But now is the time to maybe rethink those positions. Yeah. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm pretty certain of my opinion, though. You can feel free to disagree, and I'm just going to not really pay attention to you. Maybe at my own peril, but that's what I really believe. And that sort of view informs my larger worldview that there's a gross capital misallocation away from industry and towards services and leisure. Right? We don't think of today. We don't think of manufacturing as a national security concern. We're starting to with investments in TSMC and Intel, bringing fabs back home. TSMC and Intel are both opening fabs in Arizona. But considering how much companies like GM contributed to the war effort in World War II, I don't think it was so smart to allow them to outsource manufacturing to China, even though that was maybe the best compromise we could come up with for a failing economy. But if total war breaks out, we're not going to have the same. I don't know if it's possible if we have the same capacity to ramp up like we did in World War II with public-private partnerships in taking down, in funding and building military weapons for the war. The war, by and large, I don't think is going to happen on our land, but it's going to happen in Europe. But America had this implicit partnership with Europe, which basically said that we'll be the war machine and you guys be the intellectual machine and or the the heartland really, and we'll be the we'll provide the guns and the tanks and the airplanes and the drones, I'm sort of mixing analogies here, but we were going to be the war machine for Europe, and Europe was going to be the cultural heartland, and we took over both the war machine. We exported the war machine, and we became the center of culture, and I think that's totally the wrong way around. But the idea anyway is that if catastrophe does break out, maybe we'll step up our game and it'll smack some sense back into us. But maybe not. Maybe the whole thing just collapses and we'll be living in an order dictated by the Orient, which is terrible. Greatest thing about America is its freedom, and the freedom allows Asiatic countries like Japan and Korea to do their thing, and allowed China to grow unfestered, unencumbered. That's maybe not a good thing. And so as a result, we're sort of adopting an Asiatic kind of orientation. And that's not a world that I want to live in. In any case, things are untenable the way that they are. We can't keep doing what we're doing and hoping for a different result. But nobody wants to take the hit. Nobody wants to take the hit. Nobody wants to be responsible. The Fed doesn't want to raise interest rates, contrary to, I don't know if it's Goldman Sachs or B of A or whatever, but pretty much all the big banks think that we're going to be seeing a ton of rate hikes, but I just don't think that's going to be. It's not going to happen. The Fed is supposed to be independent, but the Senate elects the Fed, and the status quo makes it so that they don't want to take the hit. The Fed doesn't want to take the hit from the Fed raising interest rates would say something bad about the political order, the machinations of the political order. That is not popular with the political order. And it'll take something drastic. One day we'll all wake up and we'll see that, we'll see that, I guess not even hopefully. One day we'll wake up and we'll see that everything's all fucked up and we just can't continue. I don't know how that plays out, Does it break us entirely? Can we compensate for it? Yeah.